The little girl in the red velvet dress stood on the marble floor of the Grand Meridian Hotel lobby, clutching a folded piece of paper like it was a passport to somewhere better. Her name was Lila, 3.5 years old, curls pinned with a tiny bow that had already come half undone. Across from her sat a man the world knew only as Mr. Whitlock, though his real name was Evan. 34. Broad-shouldered, navy suit pressed to a blade. He read the Wall Street Journal with the same intensity he once used to read bedtime stories. Lila took one step, then another. The paper trembled in her fist. "Daddy," she said, voice small but clear, "this is for you." Evan lowered the paper just enough to see her. His eyes, storm gray, always calculating, softened for half a second. He took the note. It was a crayon drawing. Two stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. Beneath it, in shaky capital letters, "I miss you." He folded it once, slipped it into his breast pocket, right over his heart, and went back to the market indices. Lila waited. When nothing else came, she turned and walked away, red shoes clicking like tiny gunshots across the floor. That was the first twist. The man in the photograph wasn't a stranger. He was her father. And he hadn't looked up again. Part 1. The Hotel That Swallowed Time. The Grand Meridian was built in 1928, the year the market peaked before it cracked. Marble imported from Carrara, chandeliers that once hung in a czar's palace, a lobby so vast you could hear your own heartbeat echo. Guests checked in for weekends. Some never checked out. Not because they died. Though a few did, but because the Meridian had a way of making the outside world feel optional. Evan Whitlock had lived in Suite 2408 for 14 months. Not a hotel room. A life sentence with room service. He ran a hedge fund from the desk by the window, phone glued to his ear, eyes on 6 screens. His wife, Mara, had left him the day Lila turned 2. Not dramatically. No slammed doors, no screaming. Just a note on the kitchen island. "I can't breathe here." She took the dog, the Volvo, and Lila's afternoon naps. Evan kept the apartment, the fund, and the guilt. He saw Lila every third Saturday, always at the Meridian. Neutral ground. Mara's rule. He paid for the suite, the nanny, the red dress Lila wore like a costume. He told himself it was enough. Part 2. The note that wasn't a note. Every visit, Lila brought something. A pinecone. A dandelion. A band-aid still in the wrapper. Evan accepted each gift with the same polite nod he gave doormen and analysts. He kept them in a lacquered box in the suite's safe. He told himself he'd give them back when she was older. When she'd understand. But the crayon drawing was different. It had words. Words meant something. Words demanded response. That night, after Lila left with the nanny, Evan opened the safe. The box was full. 37 pinecones, 12 dandelions, 1 band-aid. He added the drawing. Then he closed the safe, poured a scotch, and stared at the city through floor-to-ceiling glass. Part 3. The Man Who Forgot How to Want. Evan hadn't always been this way. At 26, he'd coached Lila's mother through labor with bad jokes and steady hands. At 28, he'd built a treehouse in the backyard because Lila pointed at the oak and said, "Up." At 30, he'd missed her first steps because Tokyo opened while she learned to walk in Connecticut. The fund grew. The marriage shrank. Mara begged him to come home for dinner. He sent sushi from Nobu instead. She asked for a weekend at the lake. He booked Saint-Tropez for clients. The day Mara left, Evan was on a call with Singapore. He came home to silence and a note. He read it twice, folded it into his wallet, and went back to the screens. Part 4. The Saturdays that bled together. Saturdays became ritual. Nanny dropped Lila at 10 a.m. Evan met her in the lobby, newspaper in hand. They rode the elevator to the rooftop greenhouse. Lila chased butterflies. Evan checked emails. At noon, they ate grilled cheese in the cafe. At 2 o'clock, the nanny returned. Lila hugged his leg. He patted her head. Elevator down. Doors closed. He told himself the distance was protection. Markets were war. Children were collateral. Better she learn early. Part 5. The twist. On the 42nd Saturday, Lila didn't bring a gift. She brought a question. Why don't you live with us anymore? Evan's thumb hovered over his phone. He set it down. I work here, he said. But you have a house. The house is complicated. Lila considered this. Then, Mommy cries in the car. The words landed like a dropped glass. Evan felt the shards in his chest. She'll be okay, he said. Lila shook her head. She says you forgot how to be a daddy. Evan laughed. Sharp, defensive. Daddies don't forget. They just get busy. Lila looked at him with eyes too old for three. Busy is a bad word. That night, Evan didn't open the safe. He left the drawing on the desk. Stared at it until the sun came up. Part 6. The collapse. The market crashed on a Tuesday. Not the big one. A quiet one. A rumor about liquidity. A hedge fund in London that turned out to be a Ponzi in a suit. Evan's fund was leveraged 41. By Wednesday, the phones stopped ringing. By Thursday, the SEC was in the lobby. Evan stood in suite 2408, tie undone, watching men in cheap suits inventory his life. One of them opened the safe. The lacquered box spilled pine cones across the carpet. What's this? The agent asked. Evan didn't answer. Part 7. The last Saturday. Mara called on Friday. Voice flat. She wants to see you. One last time. The fund was gone. The suite was paid through the month. Evan showered, shaved, put on the same navy suit. In the lobby, Lila waited alone. No nanny. Mara had dropped her and left. Lila held no paper. No pinecone. Just her hands. Evan knelt. Hey, bug. Hi, she said. Then, are you coming home now? He swallowed. I don't have a job anymore. That's okay, she said. Mommy says jobs are like diapers. You change them when they're full of poop. Evan laughed. Real this time, rusty from disuse. They went to the rooftop. Butterflies were gone. November had killed them. Lila didn't notice. She ran circles around the empty planters. Evan watched her red dress flare like a warning. At noon, she stopped. Walked to him. Took his hand. I have to go, she said. I know. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the crayon drawing, the same one from months ago. It was crumpled now, edges soft. I want you to keep it, she said. For real this time. Evan took it. His hands shook. Lila hugged his legs. He lifted her, held her longer than he ever had. She smelled like hotel soap and strawberry shampoo. When the elevator came, she walked in without looking back. The doors closed. Part 8. The sad truth. Evan never saw her again. Not because he died. Not because Mara moved. But because the crash took everything. The fund, the suite, the reputation. He tried to call. Mara changed the number. He drove to the house in Connecticut. A for sale sign. He wrote letters. They came back returned to sender. Years later, drunk in a motel off I-95, he opened his wallet. The crayon drawing was still there, faded but intact. 2 stick figures. Yellow sun. I miss you. He cried then. Not for the money. Not for the markets. For the Saturdays he'd spent reading the paper while his daughter waited for him to look up. Epilogue. The hotel keeps its secrets. The Grand Meridian still stands. Suite 2408 is rented to a tech bro who streams crypto advice to teenagers. The lacquered box is gone. The pinecones were swept up with the rest of the evidence. But if you visit the rooftop greenhouse on a cold November Saturday, just after noon, you might see a flicker of red. A small girl in a velvet dress, chasing butterflies that aren't there. She looks up, waves, then vanishes. The staff says it's a trick of the light. Evan knows better. He's the night janitor now. Gray suit traded for gray coveralls. Every Saturday, he polishes the marble where her shoes once clicked. He keeps the crayon drawing in his pocket, pressed against his heart. He never looks up from his work. Some debts can't be paid with eye contact.